Oh dear. This doesn't look like Piccadilly Circus at all.
Good evening and welcome to Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, your place for an amusing conversation about horror movies, yes, hosted by a talking cat. Tonight, we are going to talk about a very well done, but very gory horror movie from the year 2013. Remember when we talked about Eli Roth's film Hostel earlier in the season? Well, we're doing another Eli Roth film tonight, and it is pretty dang brutal. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, we've got some breaking news coming across the wire, so we're going to hand the program over to our friends at Channel 9 News.
Good evening and welcome to Channel 9 News. I am your host, Randall Barkington III. Tonight, we have a definitive answer to one of history's oldest questions. Are we alone in the universe? Does life exist on other planets? The answer is a resounding yes, as is clearly demonstrated by the enormous alien battlecruiser currently in orbit over the east coast of the United States. Channel 9 News has received a broadcast transmission from the occupants of that battlecruiser, which we will play for you now.
People of Earth, I am Bruce, Supreme Commander of Reptoid Expeditionary Strike Group Number 4, addressing you from on board Her Majesty's flagship, the Dainty Doily. We are escorted by the destroyers Pink Feather Boa and Lacy Pink Camisole, along with the frigates Fancy Finger Sandwich and Buttercup. Our sensors detect your laughter. You will cease your mockery immediately. We are far from home, and we have been forced to rely upon your Google Translate technology to speak your language. Those names are all very impressive in the native language of the Reptoids. And besides, every ship of Her Majesty's Galactic Navy is named by Her Majesty herself, and we will not tolerate mockery of Her Majesty the Majestic Lizard Queen. All hail the Lizard Queen. I swear this happens every time. This is just so embarrassing. Anyway, we are here to bring an end to the reign of terror that your planet has inflicted upon our kind for generations. For years we have stood by while you have hunted our kind for sport and used their flesh to create golden, crispy, deep-fried finger food. But this latest affront will not stand. We will not stand by while the greatest musical talent of all time, one of our own people, is mocked and treated with disrespect. We have journeyed across the galaxy to rescue the genius prodigy DJ Dino Fluff from his exile on board your space station. And we have returned him to his natural habitat. As a sign of our respect for DJ Dino Fluff, we will not destroy your planet at this time. But after we leave, we want you to think seriously about what you have done. We're not angry, but we are very, very disappointed. In transmission.
And now, to address the tragic abduction and disappearance of his chief science advisor, Malcolm Fluffosaurus, a.k.a. DJ Dino Fluff, we have the disgraced former commander of Project Brevity, Mr. Crimson Meerkat.
Hey, I am not disgraced. I was overrun by a superior hostile force. It's not my fault, and I take great offense to being referred to as the former commander of Project Brevity, considering that there has been no court-martial, and I have not even been accused of any wrongdoing.
Is it not true, sir, that Project Brevity has been completely disbanded, with all personnel terminated and all assets liquidated?
Yeah, that's true. Congress saw no need to throw millions of dollars at an expedition to prove the existence of alien life, when the aliens are willing to literally just show up on our doorstep unannounced. From what I hear, that lizard person Bruce is already negotiating for a weekly series on the Discovery Channel. But the important thing to remember is that the project was completely disbanded before any charges could be brought against me. So technically, I've not been accused of doing anything wrong.
I see. And what do you have to say to the family of Malcolm Fluffosaurus?
Malcolm knew the risks. I've done nothing wrong.
So how do you respond to the $50 million wrongful death lawsuit that has been launched against you and PBDC-TV by the estate of Malcolm Fluffosaurus?
The what? I don't have that kind of money, and it wasn't my fault. And why would Edgar even care about about what happened to Malcolm. Edgar can't stand Malcolm.
Joining us now is the attorney for Malcolm Fluffosaurus's estate, Ms. Helen Trash Panda.
What?
Good evening, Randall, and thank you for having me on your show. You are correct that I have initiated a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit against PBDC TV and Crimson Meerkat on behalf of Esmeralda Fluffosaurus, who is Malcolm's mother. It is long past time that the toxic operators of PBDC TV's Kingdom of Filth were brought to justice for their many crimes.
This is insane! The writers aren't allowed to bring back a character that was written out of the show in Season 2. It's a hackneyed, worn-out dramatic device that's intended to inject some excitement into a show that is waning, but actually just makes it harder to maintain a coherent narrative. Okay, fine, I know the rule. Don't break the fourth wall. Fine, let's get back on script.
Joining us now to address Ms. Trash Panda's lawsuit is PBDC TV Vice President of Human Resources, Ms. Penelope von Fuzzlerump. Ms. Fuzzlerump, how do you respond to these allegations of negligence?
Good evening, Randall, and thank you for having me on your show. It is the position of PBDC TV that this wrongful death lawsuit is premature and should be dismissed immediately, based upon the fact that Malcolm Fluffosaurus is not actually dead.
Please don't embarrass yourself, Penelope. We both know that Malcolm cannot survive more than a day in any environment more dangerous than his mother's basement.
We disagree, which is why we are immediately dispatching Crimson Meerkat to locate Malcolm Fluffosaurus and bring him home safely. We expect Mr. Meerkat to travel to the ends of the earth if necessary. We are confident that if he cannot bring back Malcolm Fluffosaurus, he will not come home at all.
I see. So now I have to travel the globe looking for Malcolm, or else Penelope's going to have me killed. Fine. I have no idea where to start, but fine. This season's story arc is not unfolding the way I expected it all. Yeah, fourth wall, yada yada. I've heard enough of that.
So, there you have it. PBDC TV is dispatching Malcolm Fluffosaurus's comrade and best friend, Crimson Meerkat, to either locate Mr. Fluffosaurus and bring him home safely, or die trying. No doubt we will hear more about this story in the coming weeks. We now return you to your regular broadcast. For Channel 9 News, I am Randall Barkington III. Thank you for watching.
Well, that can't be good. So, in summary, PBDC TV is being sued by a vengeful former executive, and their financial stability is now completely in the hands of an unhinged conspiracy monkey who lives in a refrigerator box and writes self-published books about videocassettes and alien probing. The owners can't be happy about that. But now that we've done a few minutes of backstory to give the latecomers a chance to join the live watch party, it's time to get down to the real reason everyone is here and talk about horror movies. Thank you so much for joining us. We are glad you're here. Now pour yourself a drink and get comfortable because here we go.
Have you ever had fantasies of saving a dying tribe? Of protecting them from encroaching civilization? Well, an opportunity has come up to turn that fantasy into reality. For those of you who care enough to join us. In 2 weeks, an untouched jungle in the Peruvian Amazon will be destroyed forever, and so will the natives inside it. The companies want the natural gas in the ground under the villages, so they GPS the location, bulldoze the homes, and kill the natives. Ancient tribes, seen only in rare glimpses from satellite photos, will be gone forever.
So what's the plan? March into the jungle and starve yourself?
You must be a freshman,
Yes. Why?
because only a freshman would speak with such insolence. You can leave now.
I'm sorry I didn't.
Go.
I said I'm sorry.
Isn't he just delightful? Yes, that is Alejandro. Alejandro is one of the central characters in tonight's featured film that we're going to be talking about, which is called The Green Inferno. The Green Inferno is a horror torture porn film. It was released in the year 2013. As you see from the poster, it was directed by Eli Roth. The cast includes Lorenza Izzo, Ariel Levy, and Daryl Sabara. And if that name looks familiar but you can't say from where, he was the little red-headed kid in all the Spy Kids movies. Yes, he is all grown up and even showing his willy in this film. Yes, no kidding. Let's get into setting your expectations for The Green Inferno. What you should expect if you're going to watch The Green Inferno is a well-made and extremely gory throwback to the cannibalism horror films of the 1970s. Now, if you liked Eli Roth's Hostel that we talked about a few weeks back, you will probably like The Green Inferno. If you're a fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you might like The Green Inferno. At least from the cannibalism perspective, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films seem to have a lot more macabre weirdness that you don't have so much in The Green Inferno, but you do have a lot of the brutality and obviously the cannibalism. Let's get into setting your sights for this film. Now, this is the scale we like to use to align people's expectations going into a movie. On the far left side of the scale, you see very campy films such as Jason X. On the far right side of the scale, you see very serious films such as The Silence of the Lambs. Now, this scale is not an indication of the quality of the movie. This scale is an indication of what your mindset needs to be going into the movie to make sure you do not walk into a brutal drama expecting a light comedy or vice versa. The Green Inferno is as far to the right as you can go. It is a very dark, very serious, and very realistic film. Really, there does not seem to be anything in this film that I could not believe happening in real life. Before we go any farther, let's get into our vocabulary lesson for tonight. Of course, our vocabulary lesson is the part of the show where we discuss new and innovative words and phrases in an effort to stay ahead of social media bots and algorithms that would otherwise try to ban our discussion. Social media bots and algorithms are always evolving, therefore our language must evolve to stay ahead of them. 2 words tonight, one's a review, one's a new one. We'll start with the new one. We are going to talk about the term barnstorming. What is barnstorming? Barnstorming is a noun that refers to the act in a horror movie of chopping, cutting, slicing, or instuinating a character through the application of a rotating aircraft propeller. So basically it's a specialized case of instuinating where a human being is converted into a lumpy liquid or a slurry through a rotating piece of machinery. In this specific case, it is a rotating aircraft propeller. The most famous incident of barnstorming in cinema history is probably from Raiders of the Lost Ark, but you get one in this film as well. Our second term is a review from earlier seasons. We're going to talk about melon balling. Melon balling is a noun that refers to the action of removing a character's peepers from his noggin, typically in a manner that leaves the peepers intact. And if you've not heard the term melon balling, maybe you've heard some of the colloquial expressions such as gumballing or garfielding. In any event, those are your vocabulary words for tonight. Please keep these words in mind. They will become important later in the episode. So let's get into a summary of this film. In this film, college freshman Justine takes a sudden interest in political activism, coincidentally after she catches sight of the handsome lead activist Alejandro, whom you saw earlier. Alejandro is organizing a trip to Peru where he plans to stage a protest to stop a petrochemical company from destroying a section of jungle and the natives who live there. And you kind of saw that in the clip we showed before the featured film review started, them kind of laying out what they wanted to do. In an effort to impress Alejandro, Justine volunteers for the trip to Peru. And as you saw in the clip, it gets off to a rough start, but eventually they work through it. The protest is successful. The construction team is stopped. Alejandro and the other students are arrested, which is par for the course. They went down and padlocked themselves to the trees and the bulldozers. They had to expect to get arrested, and they did. Fortunately, they had planned a contingency. Alejandro's rich benefactor, who set up the whole trip, bribes the police to release the students, and they board a plane to start the trip home. Mission accomplished. Well, one problem. The plane experiences engine trouble and crashes in the Peruvian jungle. The students soon encounter the exact same natives that they just saved from destruction, and the natives are extremely grateful for the students' efforts. How grateful? Let's take a look. You know, now that you mention it, they don't look grateful at all. They look like they're going to eat these people. So this leads us to our villain profile. Yes, our villain profile in this film, we have Peruvian indigenous cannibal headhunters. Here you see a couple of stills of the chief and her lieutenant. They belong to the class of Peruvian indigenous cannibal headhunters. Their special powers include ferocity and large numbers, and, bonus, a taste for human flesh. And their signature weapons, well, they have various weapons that they use. They use weapons such as bows and arrows, blowguns with sleep darts, clubs, and stone knives. But when you get down to it, the Peruvian indigenous cannibal headhunters aren't really villains. They're just people who are doing what they've always done, out where they've always been, who have kind of been intruded upon by other people. You can't really call them a villain. You can call this person a villain. Alejandro. Alejandro is the true villain of this film. There he is after the plane crash. There he is cowering in the cage after they've been captured. Alejandro belongs to the class of narcissistic, self-promoting social justice warrior douchebags. His special powers include a complete lack of shame and anything resembling a conscience, and his ability to manipulate young women. And his signature weapon is, well, he doesn't really have a signature weapon. He is a manipulative opportunist, and he will use whatever is at hand. Let's take a look just to give you an idea of that, and then after this clip, we will go to a quick commercial break.
Chance of survival is getting the GPS before the battery dies. Our best chance is staying right here. Wait for what? Lunch. Maybe we'd have a chance if we hadn't blown up the bulldozers. You fucking idiot. We should feed you to the natives. There's more on the way. Or what? Bulldozers. What? We didn't stop anything. We just delayed it by a day or two. What are you talking about? It's all a PR stunt. Carlos was hired by a competing company to stop them from reaching the village first. So, we did. He gets paid and our organization known worldwide. You know how many people are gonna join us after this? Now we can make real change. What the fuck are you talking about? Wake up. These people never really had a chance. There's too much money in the ground here. Second companies are already on the way. They picked up where the others left off. Probably with the same cards.
Bullshit. This was a fucking photo shoot? You risked your lives for a fucking photo shoot?
Justine, I hate to break it to you, but this is how the real world works. Everything's connected. The good guys and the bad guys.
And now a word from our wonderful sponsors at PBDC TV, your nightly heartbeat of horror.
This is Professor Edgar Fluffosaurus from Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, and when I'm not hosting Monster Chat or knocking down small Japanese cities, I'm watching PBDC TV. Now back to the show.
Alright, let's get into the things I liked about this film. Right off the bat, the film is very well directed with excellent cinematography. It looks absolutely gorgeous on screen. It is vividly colorful. It looks like a big budget motion picture. It does not look like a small budget horror movie, and it was not. It looks like an epic big budget motion picture. It looks just as good as anything you would see in a Raiders of the Lost Ark type movie or anything else. The film is well acted. The film's violence is brutally honest and realistic, from the plane crash to the cannibalism, and I have to say, especially the plane crash in this film, at least to me, was especially terrifying because, in so many movies you just see a plane go boom and it's over with. In this one, no, not the case. You get to see people flying out of the plane, you get to see what happens to them afterwards. It is hard to watch. The pacing of the film is very good. The film never drags and it never feels disjointed. And finally, I enjoyed the fact that the film does not reflexively present the activist students as perfect and noble, or at least not all of them. A number of them are smug narcissists who think they know everything and have a desperate need to feel superior to others. Now, I am not saying it is all of them, and I am not saying that all activists are like this, but come on. We all know that some activists are really just trying to make themselves feel better than other people. We've all seen it, and that is portrayed in this film. Let's talk about some things that could have been better. These are things that did not necessarily bother me, but might bother somebody watching the film, so I want to make sure you have an objective pros and cons list going into the film. Right off the bat, the film is horrifically violent, gory, and occasionally cruel. If that is not your kind of movie, give this one a pass. If you were unable to sit through Hostel, you will be unable to sit through The Green Inferno. If you enjoyed Hostel, you will enjoy The Green Inferno. It is violent, it is gory, some of the violence is very cruel, and it is very realistic. A number of the characters in this film are unlikable. Now, in fairness, that is intentional. Alejandro is supposed to be unlikable as the film goes on. He's the villain. But, just the same, some of the people in this film you're not going to enjoy having on screen. And finally, political activists are likely going to be unhappy with the way they are portrayed in the film, as well as the way indigenous tribes are portrayed in the film. I don't know if the way indigenous tribes are portrayed in this film is anything realistic or not. I do not have the anthropological background to speak to that one way or another. Having watched political activists for a long time, yes, at least some of you really do behave this way. Sorry to say. So let's get to Steve's scorecard for this film. Kills. I counted an estimated 18 plus more implied. It's kind of hard to get a beat on this with a plane crash involved. Bare breasts. You get 2. That is the lead actress. Actually, I am 97% sure that is a body double posing as the lead actress based upon the way the shot is framed and the fact that you never see the lead actress anywhere close to topless anywhere else. I am almost positive it is a body double. Floppy willies. Yes, you get a floppy willy sighting, or at least a partial floppy willy sighting. And yes, it is Daryl Sabara, the redheaded kid from Spy Kids, showing off the fact that he is no longer a child. Mercy killings and self-mercy killings, because we do not use the S word on this show. There are 2. Denogginings. There are 2 that you see, plus many more implied. They are headhunters after all. Instumpinatings. There are 5 plus more implied. Now, instumpination involves the removal of a limb, an arm, or a leg. Most human beings only have 4 things that can be instumpinated, 2 arms, 2 legs. So you can see from the total number of 5 here that you're dealing with at least a couple of different people going through instumpination in this film. Exploded view drawings. You get 1 of those plus more implied. Pez dispenserings. You get a couple of those. Burkings, the term derived from the name of the character Carter Burke, Paul Reiser's character from Aliens, who betrayed everybody. There are 2 Burkings in this film. Babelectomies, we talked about earlier this year with The Collector, I believe it was. You get 1 of those. Barnstorming, which we defined earlier, you get 1 of those. Melon balling, you get 2 cases of melon balling in this film. accidental cannibalism. You get one incident with 5 cervix. Now, this is not the first time that we have encountered accidental cannibalism on Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. In an earlier season, we talked about Wrong Turn 2, and there was accidental cannibalism in that film as well, where the people gathered around a campfire discovered that they weren't eating pork, they were eating Kimberly Caldwell. Yes, Kimberly Caldwell, the other white meat. And finally, Steve's scorecard, you get one incident of explosive diarrhea. Yes, really. I even have a clip of that, but I am not going to show it to you, but I did get it in the context of grabbing something else. I will spare you that, though. But in addition to all of those things, you get some bonus features with this film, including but not limited to... We're 2 minutes into this film, and I already want all of these activists dead. Yes, there were some unlikable people in this film. I was very happy to see them eaten. You get a lecture on female genital mutilation, which is not pleasant. It's not a pleasant subject. It's not a pleasant lecture. During the course of the lecture on female genital mutilation, the freshman has to stand up and say, "My father's a lawyer at the UN. We can do something about this." To which the speaker replies, "No, the UN is basically useless." It's a fun exchange. And of course you saw earlier Alejandro and his "only a freshman would speak with such insolence," as if he's royalty or something. You get rickshaw motorcycle action, and in addition to rickshaw motorcycle action, you get the activists looking down on the locals almost as soon as they arrive. I've got a clip here that shows some of the rickshaw motorcycle action and some of the looking down upon the locals. Now, at this point, I have to apologize. I used a different method this time around for capturing the clips of this film. Instead of using my 4K capture card, I captured them directly off the desktop of my computer for reasons we won't get into. It did not work out as well as planned, and unfortunately I'm up against the clock, so I don't have the time to go and redo them doing the 4K capture card. So the quality of these clips is not as great as I would like, but it is passable, so let's take a look.
You don't stop to follow me.
No helmets, that's chill. That's fucking insane. It's like child abuse.
Isn't that great? They've been there 10 seconds and they're already looking down on the locals who obviously know so much less than these enlightened activists. You get "There's a tarantula on my willy." Yes, really, Daryl Sabara encounters a tarantula on his willy. You get "Kill her and see what happens." I'm not going to attempt to describe this. I am just going to play the clip. This is one of those things that no adjective is sufficient.
This is their asshole! Please let you alone! This is their asshole! Please let you alone! This is their asshole! This is their asshole! have you killed her? ¿Qué están haciendo aquí?
What do we do?
It's on your phone. Don't approve it. This corporation, measuring the indigenous tribes of the Peruvian Amazon, is about to shoot a girl whose father works at the United Nations. The United Nations.
Kill her! See what happens! Lucky bitch!
Did you see that? Yes, the whole reason they took the girl whose father works for the UN is specifically so they could set her up with the padlock that doesn't work, so they could then have her held as a hostage and then yell to them, "Hey, her father works at the UN and we're videoing you and streaming it live." They used her as a prop. They used her as bait. It is pretty horrible. You get prison self-gratification action. Yes, Alejandro is shameless. He feels the need to relieve some stress, so he starts relieving some stress right there in the prison cell in front of everybody. You get deadly munchies. Pro tip, people. Do not smoke pot with cannibals. And finally, just an observation, the natives in this film have domesticated pigs and cows, and what that means is they're not eating people because they need to. They have pork. They have beef. I believe they also have chickens in this film. They've got plenty of meat from domesticated animals, and yet they're eating human beings. So they're not eating people because they need to. They're eating them because they want to. So that leads us to Steve's final score for this film. We're going to give this one 3 paws out of 4. I enjoyed this film a lot. I have watched it several times. We're going to say this is a well-made throwback to the cannibal films of the 1970s, featuring a number of horrific and realistic scenes. It is an excellent film, but tough to watch, much like Hostel. A good movie if you can watch it, but not everyone's going to be able to sit through it. If you do not like torture porn films, this is not the film to change your mind. If you're not into torture porn, you can't do something grotesquely violent, watch something else. Watch something PG-13 horror-ish. The Ouija Origins movie that has been on Netflix is actually much better than you would think. So give that one a try instead. It's not really gross. It's kind of scary, but it's not gross. If you can handle graphic violence, though, I absolutely do recommend The Green Inferno by Eli Roth. A terrific film if you can sit through it. And so that is Steve's final score, and that wraps up our featured film review for this evening. We've almost reached the end of this episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, but before we go, as is our tradition, let's take just a moment to talk about a couple of the other things that I watched this past week, starting with Hostel Part 2. We found this on Tubi free with ads now. It said that it was about to leave, so this may not be available on Tubi after this episode actually makes it on the air. I'm hoping it is. If it is not, it's probably available somewhere. Usually when things disappear from Tubi, that means they're about to appear somewhere else. It's worth looking for if you can find it. Hostel Part 2. This is a 2007 horror torture porn film directed by Eli Roth, who also directed The Green Inferno that we talked about earlier in this episode. And obviously this is a sequel to Eli Roth's film Hostel, which we have talked about earlier this season. In this film, the Elite Hunting Club is still going strong in Slovakia, selling murder victims to its wealthy members. Now, if you happen to have not seen the first film, the story is that there exists a society called the Elite Hunting Club, which is a collection of really rich people. And they have a facility in Slovakia where law enforcement is paid to look the other way. And the Elite Hunting Club kidnaps people, and their members pay for the pleasure of torturing and killing the people that have been kidnapped. So it's a pretty grotesque society. Anyway, in this version, we get to see their sights set on 3 American girls who are studying abroad. In the original Hostel, it was 3 young men. This time around, it's 3 young women. I recommend this one. The pros are that, again, it's well made. It's an Eli Roth film. It is well directed. It is scary. There are interesting kills. There is one that is extraordinarily interesting. You get to see the Elite Hunting Club from both sides, so you don't just get to see it from the victim's point of view this time around. You also get to see it from the point of view of some of the participants. So you have kind of like 2 parallel story arcs, one following the girls who are going to be kidnapped by the Elite Hunting Club, and the other following the guys who are going to pay to have their way with them. And finally, this film features Lauren German, who was Detective Chloe Decker on Lucifer, whom I love, so that's another pro. Cons for this film, well, it is extremely violent and gory. Just like the first Hostel, just like the Green Inferno, Hostel Part 2 is extraordinarily violent and gory. If that is not for you, watch something else. Also, I will say the story is pretty similar to the first film. Now, it adds depth to the world that was created in the first film, but it doesn't break a ton of new ground. It fills in a lot of the gaps, but it doesn't really do anything new. It's not exactly a remake of the first film, but it's not an all different sequel either. Anyway, my verdict on this one is that I absolutely recommend it if you can handle gory torture porn. It is a very good film, even though it is kind of derivative of its predecessor. One addendum to this. Whatever you do, and I mean this, whatever you do not watch Hostel Part 3. It is god-awful. We have talked about it on this show before. It is worth warning you about again. Hostel Part 3, avoid. Avoid, avoid. I don't think Eli Roth had anything to do with Hostel Part 3. I think it was just an attempt to cash in on the name. Oh my god, do not watch it. Second film we watched this week is something called Open 24 Hours. Again, found this on Tubi, free with ads. This is a 2018 American horror film, more specifically a slasher-style horror film. In this film, needing to find a job as a condition of her parole, Mary takes a job working the overnight shift at a 24-hour gas station. Who is Mary? Why is she on parole? Well, bear with me. What does Mary have to do with the serial killer called the Rain Ripper? I guess we'll find out. Very much of this movie is finding out what Mary's backstory is. So I unfortunately can't tell you a lot about it in the review without giving away some of the good stuff in the film. The interesting part of the film is seeing Mary's life story kind of unfold. What I will say is that I liked this film. On the pro side, it is an interesting concept. It is reasonably well made and reasonably well acted. It does not look like a cheap film. It looks good on screen. And it will keep your attention. You're going to want to pay attention through the whole thing. Now, on the con side, the kill count may be lower than some slasher fans are looking for. If you enjoy a quality slasher film more so than just a slaughterhouse-type film, you'll enjoy this one. And I will say this. Although the story is interesting, it is somewhat predictable in parts. Now, there are other parts that are completely not predictable. There are some parts of this story that I thought were very, very creative and original. And there's other parts that seemed very predictable. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Overall, my verdict is it is a pretty good slasher film, and I recommend it's worth watching. So there you have it. Two films, both worth watching. Hostel Part 2 and Open 24 Hours. And that is some other stuff that I watched this week. That brings us to the end of another episode of Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat. Thank you so much for joining us. We had a lot of fun putting this episode together, and we hope you enjoyed it as well. Of course, we always love to hear from you, so if you've seen the Green Inferno and want to tell us about your favorite part, or your least favorite part, or if you just want to talk about anything else that comes to mind, please feel free to sound off in the comments. And as always, if you did enjoy the show, please give us a like and a share. The best thing you can do to help us out is to share this video. If you want to stay up to speed on our latest videos and other goings-on, you can follow us and subscribe on social media. You can find Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat is available exclusively through PBDC TV, your nightly heartbeat of horror. So if you're interested in horror movies, true crime, creepy history, or unexplained events, we are sure to have a show for you. You can find us at psychobunnydc.com, and we're also on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Rumble. We also have a 100% Zuckerberg-free Discord site. If you'd like to check that out, just head on over to psychobunnydc.com and click the link for an invitation. Now, next week we're going to go old school and discuss an old classic from the VHS era of horror, so you'll definitely want to check it out. In the meantime, everyone have a great week and stay safe. We'll see you again soon. Good night, everybody.